On the Foreign Affairs Committee. Let's go into the phone lines now. Our man in Parliament, Joseph Opoku-Gatlo, joins us. Joseph, after this issue was raised by the MP on the floor of Parliament, what explanation was given for the names missing on the list?
And so the list that came contains the names of 934 officials who work as the presidency, including civil and public servants as well as political appointees. There are as many as 311 political appointees on the list, and out of that 311, according to the list, there are 5 ministers of state at the presidency, there are 36 presidential staffers, and then there are 270 other junior political appointees. And the 5 ministers of state who are captured in the list are Boniface Abubakar Sadiq, Catherine Afeku, Sarah Adjua-Safo, who is in charge of procurement as a minister of state, Brian Champong, who is a minister of state in charge of national security, and then the Honorable Dr. Kweku Efriye. Those are the 5. And so Mr. Blackwood's concern is that there are about 6 others who were not exactly captured. When he raised the issue on the floor of Parliament earlier today, because we know that this is a document that has come to Parliament per the Presidential Offices Act, the majority leader, Osei Mensah-Bonsu, indicated that himself he is yet to study that document fully to get a good sense of who is in and who is out. And so he would be doing that. And it's after he's done that, he will be able to address the concerns that have been raised by Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa.
I don't know if the minority was satisfied with this explanation, but Joseph, what is their suspicion regarding the names that are missing on that list?
I put that question to Mr. Ablakwa earlier in the day, and for him, he doesn't understand how come this is happening. He wasn't satisfied with the response that came from the majority leader and was actually urging him to actually address his mind to the document, because it's a very high communication that came from the presidency to Parliament, and looking at the duration that it had come to the House by now, he probably should have seen it and had a response for him. But Mr. Ablakwa is raising concerns that there is an attempt to create an impression that the numbers in terms of the presidential staffers and those working at the presidency has gone down. You know, the indication is that when it comes to the total list itself, the year before, the number that was actually submitted to Parliament was around 998. And this year, the figure is around 934. So there is indication that the list may have gone down. Mr. Black offers the explanation that the numbers that have gone down as a result of the number of civil and public servants seconded to the presidency going down, including officials from the fire service and ambulance service and Ghana Health Service and other officials. But when it comes to the political appointees in particular, the figure has gone up, and he is suspicious that there is an attempt to create the impression that there aren't as many people working at the presidency back in 2019 compared to 2018, hence the decision to exclude some of the names, which is how come he's raising these issues and demanding answers from government on them.
So whilst there seems to be a general reduction in the numbers from 998 to 934, they are worried about these ministers who are not on the list. Now, they raised an issue with the date on the document as against when it was submitted to Parliament. What exactly is the minority saying?
One of the issues that came up was that, you know, per the requirement in the law, this is a document that should have come to Parliament as quickly as the first quarter of the year. And the indication is that it actually eventually got to Parliament per what the minority MPs are indicating well into the fourth quarter, except that the date on it, as was captured when it was delivered to the House, was the 30th of March, to then give an impression that government had actually met the requirements in the Presidential Office Act when the document was eventually communicated to Parliament. And so, again, they're calling for sincerity on the part of government, even when it's communicating some of these documents and delivering some of these reports to Parliament.
The majority leader, Osei Mensah-Bonsu, attempted to give a response to the issue raised by the Honorable Okudzeto-Ablakwa. Hello, Joseph. Hello, Joseph. Can you hear me?
Ernest, I can hear you.
Yes. So the majority leader, Osei Mensah-Bonsu, attempted a response to the issues raised by Okudzeto-Ablakwa. If you can just tell us what his response was.
He did, indicating that these are documents that they are still studying in order to gather the adequate details on it. It's something that came to the House that they are still looking at, and that in due course they would offer the necessary responses to the concerns that have been raised by Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you very much. That's Joseph Opoku Gato. He's our parliamentary correspondent, bringing us some more detail on the issues raised by the minority on the list of presidential staffers presented by government, by President Akufo-Addo to the House. Let's go to the phone lines again and speak to the man who raised the issue, MP for Norton, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa. Thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. Now, 5 names you say are not on the list. This can be a typographical error that we can't excuse.
Well, good evening to you, and thank you for having me. It's important for us to emphasize that the Presidential Office Act 1993, Act 463, it's a very important piece of legislation that places the responsibility right at the doorstep of the President to tell Parliament who he's engaging, their rank, and to let us know the total number of staff that he has engaged at the office of the President. It's a very, very important piece of legislation. And you notice that the President signs this communication to Parliament himself. I have a copy of the President's letter here. It says, Mr. Speaker, annual report to Parliament on Presidential Office staff, January to December 2019. Pursuant to Section 11 of the Presidential Office Act 1993, Act 463, I submit herewith for the attention of Parliament the annual report on the staffing position of the Office of the President for the period 1st January to 31st December 2019. The report covers the following areas. 1. The number of presidential staff employed at the Office of the President during the period. 2. The ranks and grades of these staff. And 3. Employees of other public services assigned to the Office of the President. The breakdown of all political appointees and public sector employees at the Office of the President are shown in Appendix A and B, pages 5 and 6. Now, please listen carefully. The President writes, 5 ministers of state were at post as at 31st December 2019, as listed in Appendix C, page 7. The President says 5 ministers of state, and this is under the President's signature. It's signed yours sincerely, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. When you go through this list, the 5 names provided, as I said in Parliament today, are the Honorable Boniface Abubakar Sadiq, Honorable Katrina Feku, Honorable Sarah Josefu, Honorable Paya Champong, Honorable Dr. Kweku Efriye. Conspicuously missing are 6 names, 6 ministers of state. If you compare the 2019 the report on the 2019 financial year to the 2018 report, you notice that there are 6 names from 2018 that are missing from the 2019 report. You have Senior Minister, the Honorable Yah Osafu Mafo's name missing. The Honorable Ibrahim Mohammed Awar, the Minister for Business Development's name is missing. The Honorable Dan Kweku Boche's name is not here. Honorable Mavis Hawa Kumsen. The Honorable Anthony Akoto Osei, the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation. The Honorable Minister for Planning, Honorable Professor Jambafo. These are all top appointees of the President, ministers of state who, per our records in Parliament, are at work and are functioning. If the President has relieved these 6 persons of their position, Parliament must know. Because per this communication, what the President is effectively telling Parliament is that these 6 ministers of state, including the senior minister, is the President telling Parliament that he's relieved them of their positions and that they are not at post, and that Parliament should not accord them the courtesies that they deserve. We should not file questions. We should not invite them to respond to issues in their sectors. Is that what the President is telling Parliament? Look, there are very grave consequences for this communication. That's why I thought that I raise this matter today and get the majority leader to address the concern of the minority that we have so far as this report His Excellency the President has submitted to Parliament is concerned. Unfortunately, it does appear that the majority leader and Minister for Parliamentary Affairs had not averted his mind to it. He says he's yet to read the report. I hope you read it quickly and provide answers, because as it is now, these 6 top ministers of state, ministers of state at the presidency, it does appear that the President does not recognize them. But if it is an error, then they have to withdraw this document and present a new document, a new annual report, pursuant to Section 11 of the Presidential Office Act 1993 at 463 to Parliament.
Mr. Blackwell, you talk about consequences. I'm wondering what these consequences are if the names are not on the list.
If the names are not on the list, if these ministers, so far as the president is concerned, if he's relieved them from post, then why should Parliament deal with them? Why should we accord them the privileges and the courtesies that they deserve? So there are grave consequences, and it is important that the office of the president, as quickly as possible, they need to be speaking to this. If it is the case that they have not relieved them of their duties, but it is an error, then the president must withdraw this communication and resubmit another annual report to us that accurately captures the number of ministers of state, their designations, and who they are, so that Parliament knows which ministers we are dealing with, and we can be assured that there are no impersonators all over the place, people holding themselves as ministers when the appointing authority does not consider them ministers of state. This is a very serious matter. And if it is an error too, it raises issues about the office of the president, competence, diligence, making sure that they are thorough, and that because this is a high-level communication signed by the president himself to the Speaker of the House.
Mr. Blackwell, we have been trying to get some response from the presidency. We don't have someone to speak to this yet, but our sources there tell us that, for instance, if you look at ministers like Dambotre and Hawa Kumsin, who are for regional reorganization and special initiatives, for instance, as of 2018, they were operating from the presidency, and that's how come you have their name as part of the list. As we speak now, they have moved out, they have set up, and they are full ministries. Shouldn't that be an explanation that should suffice?
That explanation must formally come to Parliament. Are we also saying that the senior minister, the Honorable Yao Safumafu, has also moved out and has also set up? We now have a senior ministry. Is that what your sources are telling you? We must know all these things. Do we now have a fully set up Ministry of Planning headed by Professor Jambafo? Do we have a fully set up Ministry of Monitoring and Evaluation that the Honorable Antonio Akoto leads? Parliament must be told. That's not how any country is run. These are legal provisions that must be strictly adhered to. The other fundamental issue that we have raised, as your parliamentary correspondent will tell you, is that the president consistently has not been complying with the law. The law is clear that Parliament must have this report in the first quarter. By the end of the third month in the following year, we should have this report. This report came to Parliament in May. In May. And I had been calling for this report even after March had long expired. We were in April. We were demanding this report. We were told it's on its way. Then the report comes in May, and what we see is that the report is dated 30th of March 2020.
So clearly, we need some responses to that, and we're working the phone lines to see if we can get somebody to speak to that. But Mr. Blackwell, is it your concern also that you have ministries like the Ministry for Regional Reorganization and Development still existing, even though on the face of it, it appears they have exhausted or executed their mandate? Is that part of your concern?
It is part of our concern. The other concern that the minority has is that if you look at the category of political appointees, it keeps going up. The president started with 27 presidential staffers. He moved to 28 in the 2018 financial year, and then now he's at 36. He started with a far lower number for junior political officers. The 2018 report says he had 254 junior political officers. Now he has 270. It keeps going up. At a time that you're saying that, look, times are tough, this economy is on its knees, let us all manage, let's learn to, brace ourselves. And yet, the president, this is penchant for large governments. It keeps going up. So a fundamental issue we have raised is that, look, we need to amend Act 463, the Presidential Office Act 1993, and place a cap, because we cannot continue this way. We believe that it was for good reason that a responsibility is imposed on the President to report to Parliament, so that at least that transparent process of reporting to Parliament will guide, presidents and, as it were, prick their conscience so that they will be minded not to have a bloated team at the office of the president. But clearly, it hasn't worked. Even with the transparency and with the heightened interest that we in the minority have shown, the president continues to increase the political appointees. So we are saying that, look, it is time to impose a cap. Let's amend Act 463 and impose a cap. I don't think that we should have more than 100. I'm being very generous. More than 100 political appointees at the office of
Mr. Blackwell, you raised another important issue in Parliament today, which I want us to address. And we're joined on the line, by the way, by the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Charles Oredu. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Top Story. Now, Mr. Blackwell, your concern is that government is delaying in the evacuation of Ghanaians who are stranded abroad. In fact, you say that the manner in which they are handling this is quite humiliating. Why is that? We've been told by government, and today the Minister for Information reiterated the point that they're still collecting data to be able to make a decision on that. We seem to have lost the honourable member, the ranking member for the Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Oredu, are you with us on the line?
Yes.
Yes, so the concern is that government is delaying unnecessarily because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Ghanaians who are stranded outside the shores of this country and will simply want to return to Ghana.
Okay, so the president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, as part of the series of meetings that he's been having with the ambassadors and the high commissioners about some few weeks ago, had one of these Zoom meetings with the heads of missions, and during the meeting, he did ask them about the welfare of Ghanaians and then some of the challenges that Ghanaians were facing. The ambassadors did articulate that some have been knocking on their doors, that they find themselves stranded as a result of the closure of the airspace, closure of the borders, and that they are willing to even fund their own tickets, pay and get them, back home, because where they are, they were finding it really, really difficult to cope. So what we did was to ask them, to bring the data, so per the data that was submitted, by the heads of mission, we had, those who had the ability to pay and those who were government funded. It was government funded. There are people who work with government agencies, ministries, some students, on government scholarships and whatnot. They have gone to partake in conferences. For the students, they've studied and they are done with their studies. They want to come back, and as a result of this closure, they are unable to come. That data, and also that of the deportees, we categorize this into three. Subsequently, we presented this data country per country, as in where Ghanaians are, to the office of the president. And I guess you heard this morning that tomorrow we're receiving per the data that was presented to His Excellency the President. Tomorrow we'll be receiving the first group of deportees from Kuwait. This group is part of the data that we did collect.
Is that the case? Because we are made to understand that these are deportees who are necessarily being allowed into the country because we have our borders closed, and so there's an exception that has been made for them. I'm not sure if this is part of the data that you collected.
No, that's part. I'm telling you, that's part of the data that we collected. That's how come we came to know that there are Ghanaians in Kuwait, about 245 Ghanaians in Kuwait, who are ready, with the support of the Kuwaiti government, to transport these Ghanaians to Ghana. So consequent to that, today we had what we call a simulation exercise, led by the Ministry of National Security. We had reps from I was present, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Health through the Ghana Health Service, the ambulance service. They are going to provide some medical doctors and some psychologists. Ministry of Interior, the Police, Fire Service, Immigration. We also have Ministry of Defense through the Ghana Army. We have the Aviation Security, Airport Authority, NADMO, Ministry of Transport, who providing. So we did what we call a simulation exercise. So we don't want a situation where Ghanaians, this category of Ghanaians, these deportees, who for so many hours will be sitting in an aircraft, will land and they will go through, a hassle, to be able to be cleared and subsequently quarantined. So we've done that. We did that today, and it went seamlessly well. So we are foreseeing that tomorrow we are going to have a very smooth process. But if somebody should make the point that government is delaying, and as a result, Ghanaians in other countries are facing more difficulties, I would disagree with that.
Mr. Radio, the point is that this is just a situation for Kuwait. What happens to those in the U.S.? What happens to those in Ethiopia, for instance? We spoke to some people last week and elsewhere.
We have a very solid data that captures all Ghanaians.
So when is government going to take the decision to get them back into the country, which is what they want?
We have a solid data that captures all Ghanaians who are willing and yearning to come.
When will government allow them into the country, Mr. Redu?
These categories of Ghanaians, like I said, are those who want to pay, those who, government sponsored. As we speak now, we've spoken to the airlines that will be doing, the evacuation. We've also spoken to some of the key, because before they come in, they would have to be pre-tested. We don't want a situation where even on the flight, those who are prone, when you collect, the virus on their counterpart or their competitor.
So, Mr. Redo, all of these definitely should be part of the planning. Last week when I spoke to you, you said that government was collecting data. A week on, we are still collecting data. We don't have a decision on the number of Ghanaians who are stranded.
No, I probably you didn't hear me. I said that as part of the data that we collected, tomorrow we are receiving deportees. I told you that earlier. So that's part of the implementation plan. Tomorrow we are receiving 245 deportees. And that's part of the data that we collected from our mission in Kuwait. So we faced the process. This is the deportees. We'll be receiving them tomorrow in the afternoon, 2:45. When they are done, they will move to the next stage. So it's not a matter of over a week. We discuss this matter.
I want you to hold the line for me briefly, Mr. Redu. We also have Mr. Kujeto Ablakwa who raised the issue in Parliament today. Yes. Mr. Ablakwa, you've heard the explanation from the Deputy Minister. The government has already started the process, and so it's just a matter of time, and we would have the others, especially those who want to pay to come back to the country. They would have the opportunity to do so.
I'm afraid, and let me extend regards to the Honorable Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. I am afraid that we are hearing conflicting things from government. Government is not sounding consistent. The Honorable Minister responsible for information told Ghanaians this morning that the group being brought home from Kuwait are deportees who have fallen foul of the immigration laws in Kuwait. That's one. Number two, the Honorable Minister responsible for information told Ghanaians through the media that government is yet to take a decision on whether Ghanaians will be evacuated or not. That story is on your website. I've read it. I've heard I've listened to the minister's voice. So, conflicting accounts. And you see, I am worried that, look, we don't have time. This is a matter that requires urgent, consistent policy formulation implementation. Exactly what is the situation with our compatriots outside the shores of this country? What is the decision of government? And how soon are we going to act?
Mr. Radio, when, so the question remains that when would we have a decision on those in the other countries?
So that we clear, some of the doubts that is raised. I'm saying that as part of the data that we collected from all our missions, with the issue of Kuwait, we didn't have Ghanaians who were saying that really ready to pay and all that. What we had in Kuwait were Ghanaians who were subject to a deportation order. So tomorrow we'll be receiving the first group of such people. And this is different from those who are going to be evacuated. So as part of our data that represented to government, it captures that Kuwaiti group of 245.
Mr. Redu, we understand the situation in Kuwait. You have eloquently told us about what government is doing, what has happened. That what we want to know is what happens to those elsewhere.
So this is different from the fact that
that is the question I've been asking all along, Mr. Redu. What happens to those elsewhere? When is government taking a decision? Yes.
Government is still looking at the data that's been presented in terms of people coming from the US, the UK, and other jurisdictions. Government is yet to take that decision. But in respect of Kuwait, government is taking a decision to accept deportees who are going to be deported tomorrow in the afternoon.
Thank you very much for your time. That's the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, Charles Oredu. We also heard from the Ranking Member on Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee, Samuel Kujetu-Ablakwa. Our top story is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success is our passion. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready? Gassam, the nation builder. I'm Ernest Manu. Ghana Connect is next with Evans Mensah.
Hi, Ernest, are you ready to live with the coronavirus?
I guess I have to be ready.
It's like you have a choice.
I don't have a choice.
I mean, so that's a conversation we're having tonight. And yesterday, the information minister asked the country to begin a conversation around living with the virus, while it's, we're trying to put in place mechanisms to social distance, etc., etc. But I guess the point is, at some point, the restrictions will have to be lifted.
That is so.
And we have to be accustomed to the fact that this is going to be here with us for a while. So how do we live with the virus and live safely with it? And it's a conversation that the government says which will happen. So we are taking the government up on that particular challenge. You say you don't have a choice.
I don't have a choice.
But if you had a choice, you'd rather what? Not live with the virus?
I guess we have to
live under the restrictions perpetually.
It's just the way the virus is behaving, and it appears that we cannot be under lockdown forever, and so life would have to move on. Our lives will be altered in a certain way, which is what we have to, I guess, have a conversation around what we can do and what we cannot do.
Well, that's a conversation we are having tonight. Wherever you are, I want you to join us. Today, I want to hear from you as much as possible whether you are ready to live with the virus. The government is introducing this campaign, Living with the Virus. They want us to talk about it first. So let's talk about it. Give feedback to the government on this. Now, listen to the way the information minister put it when he addressed the